Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of the DS News webinar series. I'm David Wharton, Managing Content Editor of DS News. Today, we're bringing you a presentation entitled How Rapidly Changing Technology Can Benefit Your Operations, sponsored by Speridian. A few quick logistical notes. You can download a copy of the PowerPoint deck we're using via the handouts interface here in GoToWebinar. If you have any questions for our panelists, you can submit those via the questions interface, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end of the hour. Also, a recording of this presentation will be available via the same link you used to register later today. If you've got any other questions during the broadcast, you can submit those to me via the questions or the chat interfaces. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's presentation, Matt Slonaker, the Chief Executive Officer of M. Allen LLC. Matt?
Thanks, David. Thanks to 5-Star DS News, and also thanks to our host, Speridian Technologies. It's got a great group of colleagues of mine and experts in technology and financial services with me this afternoon. Before I get on to the objective and start our Q&A, let's do some quick intros. And so, Dave, I'll start with you, sir.
Yeah, hi. Welcome, everyone. As Matt mentioned, my name is Dave Vita. I head up the Enterprise Business Development Team at Computershare Loan Services. I've been in the mortgage business about 25 years, mostly as an operator and servicing in the vendor space as well as a lender. Computershare is a leader in providing end-to-end products and services to the mortgage industry, including origination, fulfillment, subservicing, valuation, asset management, capital markets, and we run the industry's oldest and largest cooperative. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I like to golf. You can tell by my background. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Dave. Rick?
Great, thanks, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity to sit on the panel today. My name is Rick Ehringer. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Wedgwood out of Southern California. I've been in technology for real estate for about 25 years, mostly working in the developer, owner, operator space in all major asset classes. I also have experience managing software and services for focused on large asset owners as customers, and I've been here at Wedgwood for 1 year now.
Thanks, Rick. And Brendan?
Great, thanks, Matt. So my name is Brendan Neary. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Speridian, and been in this industry for, 25 years, focused really on helping companies leverage technology for digital transformation. And at Speridian, there are really 4 things that we're really trying to help organizations try to accomplish. And that would be really empowering employees, engaging customers, optimizing operations, and in some cases, developing new products, right, that differentiate the organization. So those are some of the things that our organization is focused on helping. And looking forward to talking with you guys today and seeing if we can share some insights that we've seen and we're seeing in the industry today. So thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Brendan. And again, thank you all. As far as an intro to me, Matt Slonaker, I've been in the financial service space for 28 years, a little bit of tech, a third of my career, a third in business operations, and the last third running sales and marketing teams. At M. Allen, we focus with our clients, everything growth, from M&A to organic growth, business development related services. And so let's get to our topic. Technology and how is it fueling operations and differentiation in financial services? David, could you please, you got it out. So uncertainty unlocks performance and differentiation with technology in financial services. So let's go to our first question. We'll have some prepared questions. We're going to have some dialogue as a group. We also, at the very end, will have a call to action for those attending this webinar. Hopefully you can take back to your operations in your company and share it with your colleagues. So we will have that at the very end of our Q&A. And we'll allow for some Q&A as well. Again, we have lots of prepared questions, so if we don't have any from the audience, we'll continue with our prepared questions. So the first question, Dave, and we'll start with you on this, is how did technology assist our industry and your company in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, we probably, like a lot of folks, probably wouldn't have survived without technology this year. Specifically, we had 2 things going on. Obviously, COVID and making sure that our employees were safe. We could take care of borrowers and consumers and our clients. Technology just in the from a servicer's perspective, with the first response around COVID and forbearance and the CARES Act, we really needed technology to just assist consumers. And we were able to quickly put together a number of self-serve options for consumers, both on the web and through the IVR. What we found is kind of after the first week or so that 70% of consumers that came in to ask for assistance were able to self-serve. Obviously, we couldn't have done that without technology, again, both on the web and the IVR. I think the technology teams learned how to move pretty quickly and be more agile than they already were. And so technology was absolutely critical in terms of just making sure that consumers got what they needed. And just in terms of magnitude, we probably managed about 110,000 total requests. So we had that whole side of the equation. And the other part, I think, is just dealing with the business that happened last year. So as both a servicer and a fulfillment provider, we dealt with both ends of the cycle last year. We had tremendous demand for payoffs, as most people know that are in the mortgage business, or at least in the servicing side of the business. Tremendous demand from all parties, third parties, consumers, and our ability to move those things, turn those things, make sure they're accurate. That was critical. We deployed new technology to support some of those functions. And then as a fulfillment provider, just dealing with the demands of capacity and helping our clients manage pipelines more effectively. And there's a number of things that we leverage there, but I'll let others speak. And then lastly, of course, using technology to move everybody at home. Rick, you might be in the office, but I think the rest of us are at home today, and a lot of folks still are at home. So I think it was a pretty incredible move by so many people to make sure we got people in a safe space, leveraging technology to do that, leveraging technology partners to assist in that effort. So again, I think on the COVID side of the equation, telephony and web support, and then just in general, dealing with capacity demands on both sides of the mortgage spectrum.
Thanks, Dave. Rick?
Yeah, 2020 was definitely a busy year in technology for Wedgwood. We had to get 700 people working remotely very quickly. We were able to do that by leveraging mostly communication and collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams. We standardized a lot on Microsoft tools, so that was natural. But also we had to focus on mitigating the risks that the remote workforce now creates from a cybersecurity perspective. So we applied a number of security capabilities, and those were all focused on those specific vulnerabilities that we hadn't seen before. But during the pandemic, the company actually expanded our supply chain, and we sold off an existing business. So one big project was the implementation of a marketing and CRM system to support our Wedgwood Homes business, which is our residential acquisition and renovation business. And that's turned out to be a very good investment, and one that we're pleased that we got started on early. And then earlier this year, we also, another big event for us unrelated to COVID was we separated all the dependent technology in order for us to part with Civic Financial Services, which was our loan origination arm. So we successfully got through that transaction, and I think we're well poised for coming out of this economic downturn.
Thanks, Rick. Brendan?
Sure, yeah. Guys, you covered on really a lot of the big ones, right, that everybody has seen. But I think Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, he said it best. In the first 2 months of the pandemic, we saw 2 years of digital transformation, right, take place. And without a doubt, all of the things that Dave and Rick mentioned, right, with collaboration and even phone systems and a lot of things really needed to come into place. But I think what we also saw too is people kind of figured that out. How do you kind of manage the softer side of that? How do you deal with people that are now working at home and they have kids to juggle and they have to, how do you make that work? How do you deal with just communication in general in terms of affirmative communication or corrective communication? So, I think organizations that we work with started to try to figure out how do we govern all this, right? And Rick, you mentioned the security piece of it, but making sure that that all of the content that's being developed and created is being organized and structured and leveraged, right, in a way that doesn't create sprawl, doesn't create longer term technical debt or potential problems. So like I said, I think we saw that happen. And then there are really two other key areas that I saw take place too. And Dave, you kind of touched on a little bit, and that is companies started to take more of a mobile first perspective, right? They started to look at that customer interaction and making sure that they really were shoring up the way they interacted with the customer base using mobile devices, tablets, working from home, right? So we saw a lot of that. And I think what then took place was, okay, now we're getting a lot of data, right, that's coming in as a result of that. So as Rick, you mentioned, security becomes an issue, and even privacy, right? So creating policies and procedures to make sure that your customers feel comfortable, right, with what are you doing with this data. So, again, lots of interesting things took place, but I think what I saw from my perspective, the biggest challenges arose around some of those governance things that you just got to make sure you've got covered. So a couple of thoughts from me.
Thanks, Brendan. And Dave, on your response, you mentioned like 110,000 requests. I'm kind of curious, was that mostly payoff, or was that also borrowers reaching out for assistance?
Oh no, payoffs were probably a much larger number for the year. That was just for assistance. And, like everyone that dealt with this, it was, you need to make sure that hey, once you got the employees in a safe space, that people weren't waiting on the phone, to talk to somebody if they had a simple request. Hey, I need assistance because I lost my job, or I need assistance for whatever reason it was. Under the options, and be able to automate that without providing, a person and a wait time and a call routing. And really, the strategy was to push that out so that the people that really did need to speak to somebody could get to somebody. And so not necessarily filter, but it's like, hey, I can self-serve and I understand it. I've read this. And then, the second part of this was really sending out videos, customized videos to people so that they understood really what they signed up for. Because the next wave of phone calls was like, okay, what happens next? And wait a minute, I've read this, I've got a question. So then using technology to push information out after we dealt with the initial response was then educating consumers, then again, just so that consumers could be taken care of and they weren't in these long hold patterns, they get the information that they wanted. And we found that again, more than half, like I said, 70% of the consumers that got help did it themselves.
Well, thanks, Dave, for that follow-up on that. And so it kind of leads to our next question, which Rick, since Dave just spoke, I'll give you this one first, and then Dave can chime in. What key technologies? I hear AI all the time. We see it, every day. So I'm sure you'll talk about artificial intelligence, but what are the key technologies that you see coming into the horizon within real estate and financial services?
Well, the pandemic, as others have mentioned, have really accelerated the company's embrace of digital transformation, and a lot of companies were forced into it, not necessarily planning for it, but forced into it. So the long-term value of those actions that were undertaken in that digital transformation during the pandemic will be greatly dependent on how the transformation was planned and executed. Very much to Brendan's perspective. I also agree that the computing anywhere, anytime, workday hours now vary, right? With employees working remotely, they have distractions. We need to enable those people to work when and where they can. And even when we bring people back to the office, I think there's still going to be a lot of people that are going to remain remote. It's going to make sense. It's going to make a lot of sense for the employer as well as the employee. We leverage a lot of cloud technologies in that space, and a number of people leverage cloud as a perfect opportunity to make it happen. The interesting thing is, I think, is what happened if we had this pandemic 10 years ago? What would that have looked like? We have this consumerization of technology that's really helped people adopt to using video and other things, and just the infrastructure to support this kind of thing is really helpful. We would have been, as a society, a lot worse off if this were 10 years ago. I think also that data has become important as companies learn how to harvest the benefits of the big data world. And even in the small to mid-sized business, or even in our part of the industry, right, or industry of the entire economy, there's a growing interest in leveraging internal and external data to identify opportunities. So to the extent that you can do that, and not just with historical and trending data, but with actionable data as well, I think that will help leverage and grow businesses. So big data is a big one. Even if it's medium-sized data, I think it's really important. And that's probably the first step before we can really all begin to benefit from a true mashup of the big data world. And AI also plays into that as well. It's a big proponent, or it's a big component of big data. It's how you get those insights. What does this data mean? How can we keep the algorithm to learn more as we learn more, to provide more and better insights? So I think data, AI, those are really important, and I think we're going to see those flourish more and more. I think they're slow on the uptake in the industries, but I think we're starting to figure them out. Just like cloud was. Cloud was slow. It was actually more expensive in the early days and harder to manage. And now it's becoming something that makes a lot more sense. There's great competition out there, and it's really good, reliable products. So
Rick, we'll probably touch on this when we get to kind of the talent and managing remote teams, because I'm kind of curious your thought about AI from a talent mix with your teams. Is it hard to find that talent? So I'm kind of curious when we get to that question. I might have interrupted. Do you have another piece there you wanted to finish with before I turn it to Dave?
Yeah, no, I just want to say we're going to continue to refine and automate our business processes. I know that doesn't sound very elegant. It doesn't sound very sexy, but it's not the next big thing in tech, but when it's done well, it truly pays dividends. So we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. So Dave, the technologies.
Yeah, that's interesting. Under the question in my notes, I put down eliminate, automate, innovate, and refine, Rick. So those are definitely priorities. I mean, I've been in financial services since 1988. And I remember migrating from Lotus 1-2-3 to the first version of Excel, which for any of you old people out there that did that, it was miserable. We went from sort of /key to mouse, which it was horrible as an analyst. I remember that. So I've been in the mortgage business a long time, through a lot of cycles. And this one's really exciting from a technology perspective. There's a lot of really cool, innovative stuff out there that is changing some radical change and then some refinement. But I think for us, it's really improve the experience, and that is both with the borrower and with our employees, and even some of the stuff that Speridian has built. The employee experience, the user experience is so much better now in the last just couple of years, seeing stuff move. So we've got the experience part. We always got to make sure our clients and their clients or customers, which are borrowers that we manage, their experience is as best as it can be. And again, that's a high technology priority. And then making sure, again, our employees don't have to switch between systems. A lot of the legacy stuff, Matt, is just, you go here and you pivot over here, and then there's linear workflow and stuff like that. So I think there'll be continued focus on the experience part. And then the other is it's got to be cost and efficiency. Last year, depending on what side of the business you're on, there was a massive capacity problem, a big reliance on people. In some of those instances, people asking to get paid too much, or moving jobs a lot, and just had a huge impact on businesses. So I think as you come out of this, we got to think about, well, how do we not have that happen again? And capacity and margins are compressed, and the business gets harder. So there'll always be this cost efficiency, technology focus, and then I think experience is the other side of that. And then lastly, I think there's some cool stuff going on in blockchain, and some folks, if you follow what Mike Cagney's doing with Figure, there's just cool stuff on that front also, and it'll be interesting to watch. in terms of where we're going with financial services.
Thanks, Dave. And it kind of leads to our next question. So, David, and we're going to go in an opposite order here since, Dave, you just finished. I'll give Brendan a chance to chime in here first on this one. So, Brendan, how did the pandemic impact strategic projects? What were you seeing with the clients, and how did that change internally for Speridian?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what we saw happen with projects was, certainly ROI became king, right? So it became super important to make sure that the return on investments was going to be just a lot sooner, right, than otherwise. But I think one of the priorities that I saw really kind of stay intact, and I mentioned one of these objectives that we help companies with is optimizing operations. And this idea of automation, even before the pandemic, right, we saw a lot of momentum around RPA, or robotic process automation. And that might be a new term for some people listening in here today. But the idea is this kind of emulation, right, of a human being interacting with systems. That was getting a lot of momentum in the marketplace. And now we've moved to the idea of hyper automation, right, which is the idea of injecting more AI into the process. And so instead of doing these sort of isolated automations of a process, trying to take a more holistic look at how do employees work throughout the day, and where is there true opportunity to impact the business in one of two ways, right? Reducing costs, saving time, or increasing quality, right? And I think two things about what impacted and what I'm seeing are challenges for companies. I'd be curious to hear what you, Rick, and Dave have to say about this. But the first one is there's just so many different choices, right? You have tools and technologies that you're paying for today. Then you've got a ton of vendors that are coming into the market. Even Microsoft, they just bought Softomotive, about 9 months ago, and they're adding it to the mix. And when they get behind big momentum like that, that changes the dynamic of market quickly. But perhaps even more important, I would even call out the issue of when you do these big automation initiatives, you've got to be super careful about how you message that to your employee base, because they see that with potential fear, right? Hey, my job's in jeopardy. They're about to do this. So, there's a lot of promise, a lot of opportunity to optimize, cut costs, increase quality. But you just can't forget that people see that as, potential threat, right, to their job. So it's important to think through, how are we going to message this? How are we going to support our employee base? So those are a couple of things that I've seen in terms of priorities. A lot of shifting more towards hyper automation, and obviously the guys have already spoken to analytics. And I'll just share one quick thought on analytics, because this is kind of interesting. Early in the pandemic, when we saw even industries that were being decimated, certainly letting people go, I noticed a number of them were actually posting hiring or job postings for data and analytics, data scientists, right? So clearly the market was showing, listen, we've got to figure out how to not only report on the past, but have some form of predictability of what's going to happen based on the data we have. So no question, data analytics and hyper automation were big priorities that I saw.
Thanks, Brendan. And Rick, let's turn it to you. How did this change the strategic projects that you had? What were the changes?
Well, it really forced us to change the way that we think about the technology investment. And early on, we focused on tightening our belt and deferring investments. Nobody knew where the pandemic would take us, the industry, the company, the world. So we, like everyone else, I think we quickly consolidated a lot of our external services, and we had to reassign staff, et cetera. But as our confidence grew in the business landscape, the belt tightening soon shifted to focus on investing, because we know that investing in a down market will help prepare an organization to come out of that economic downturn, that recession, more powerfully, with stronger. You can't keep dipping your toe in as the market changes. So we started to do that with our investments early enough that we're already beginning to see some benefits from that. So we hope to continue to expand on those investments and increase our business agility. And basically, we don't know what the market's going to look like as we come out of this, right? So let's make sure that the business is agile enough to respond to those changes. And to the extent we can, expand on our competitive advantage, then all the better. But I think, yeah, companies need to invest in down markets and technology so that they can better operate coming out of them.
Thanks, Rick. And Dave?
Yeah, it's funny, Rick. So one of my favorite IT professionals in the mortgage business once told me, said it's a funny mortgage. The mortgage business is funny in that when we're busy, people can invest in technology and improving process, and when we're slow, you can't afford to invest in technology and improving process. But I do think this is a unique cycle. There's lots of great stuff being developed in tools and technology and partners and providers like Speridian. I think feedback I got really, and again, I'm in the sales organization, so we're very focused on projects that, support new products or new clients or improving things for our existing clients and generating revenue. But, the feedback I got from the operations and change team was that we focused on things, smaller things, better things, faster things, being more agile. And really testing the agile methodology from a technology perspective, and going ugly early. So, kind of taking a lean startup approach and really taking things out there, testing, getting the feedback, reusing different things. So those projects definitely took precedent. Things definitely got pushed, again, from a vendor perspective in the mortgage business. We had to take care of our clients. And obviously compliance and things of that nature. And risk-related projects probably still stayed at the top of the stack, Matt. But some of the forward-looking projects may have been pushed aside for just making sure we could remain agile, do smaller projects, and get out faster with enhancements. That's sort of what the project management and change management landscape looked like for us last year.
Thanks, Dave. And kind of leading into this next question for Rick, Dave was talking about clients being on the sales side. I can feel that same experience being a sales professional and helping companies like Speridian as well with their sales efforts. So Rick, what are you seeing out there from suppliers and vendors, and how did you look at suppliers and vendors through this pandemic, and how are you looking at them as you go into late 2021?
Yeah, so I look at it as two different areas, right? Staff augmentation versus project-based engagements, and we leverage staff augmentation when skill sets are rare or we have a temporary need for sure. We don't want to invest in that skill set long term. So that's how we use our staff augmentation. We like to have a core of skill sets internal to the organization that are full-time needs. But then as projects come or as we may take on too much at one time, then the staff augmentation model helps us a lot. We also use the project-based engagements, and we typically do that when we're looking for expert methodologies or industry knowledge that we don't currently have in-house. And so we've also used a number of companies. We're now also leveraging Speridian in that same capability. And that really, we're able to leverage both models to get expertise and experience that we don't have, and the bandwidth to complete the projects that we have in a timely fashion. So both are highly valuable. I think it works really well when you understand what your current state is, your current skill sets are, and not just have a knee jerk to go either to the market for help or to try to do things too much in-house. So having a good balance is really helpful, and I think optimal for the business.
So Rick, just as a follow-up on that, kind of curious, did you cut any vendors out that were not ready for the pandemic? Did you have to make any cuts, or did you I'm just kind of curious, did you increase by Y, or did you decrease, or you pretty much had the right partners and you're still with them?
Well, I was also new here, right? So at the beginning of the pandemic, I literally was here, I think 4 days before I left this off. So coming into a new place, I was examining all the relationships that we have, and I was seeking to again, consolidate so that we didn't have two doing the same thing and all that sort of thing. So I think all of them that I dealt with were handling the pandemic well themselves as organizations, as providers. So it was just more natural that a new tenure for the PIO to come in and look through things and keep things they think are appropriate and add to the arsenal a little bit, but also pull things off that are either redundant or we think we have a better way of achieving. So
Thanks,
that's
Rick.
how that went for us.
Thanks, Rick. And from a time perspective, we're a little over the halfway mark. I've seen David going at the audience with any questions. Feel free to send those in the chat feature, and David and I will get those answered, hopefully, by our esteemed panel here. So, Brendan, I'm going to turn to you for our next question. This is related to best practices that you're seeing in a remote working environment between the business and IT. We always know that that can be a challenge, the silo syndrome, but now you're putting both business and IT in remote. What were some of the best practices that helped you or some of the clients that you saw?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, that transition to remote, a couple things. We saw really a lot of our customers were noticing that their employees were looking for more self-directed work. We also noticed that a lot of our customers' employees were starting to work more in groups. There was a lot more group, hence this idea of collaboration, right? Collaboration tools. And Rick, I think you mentioned Teams, and certainly SharePoint's out there, and there are many others, right? From Slack to you name it, right? But the big thing, I think, in terms of just how our company is going about that, a couple things. We had a couple of clients reach out and say, "Oh my God, we're in trouble. We tried to roll this Teams tool out, and we trained all of our employees, and they're not using it, right? They're still on Zoom, or they're using GoToMeeting, or whatever it is, right?" And I think when we sat down with them and we really peeled back the layers of the onion, what we noticed was, well, of course you had this problem, right? You didn't really take a true change management approach to really sitting down before you roll out the tool and start training people and really try to understand what are some of the concerns, what are some of the fears you're going to have over this transition before we do it. That's one. But I think an interesting benefit came out of going through some of those discussions with our clients to help them go through that process was, in addition to uncovering fears and concerns and addressing those, what you'll find is you're going to uncover a lot of opportunity that they see in some of these new tools that will help them. For example, robotic process automation or bot technology. So, the initial thought, right, is to make sure that, hey, let's make sure we move to this new world smoothly. But you're going to get another benefit out of it, which is if you engage them early and really kind of support them through the transition, you're going to uncover all kinds of new opportunities that'll make their jobs better, faster, quicker, and inject a little bit more quality. So that was one thing that I definitely wanted to share with the group, because like I said, you wouldn't ever consider doing that with a loan origination software product, right? You wouldn't just bring people in and train them and hope that they start using it effectively, right? There's definitely some planning, coaching, guidance going on. So like I said, I think with some of these collaboration tools, some organizations took the approach that, we'll just train them up and off they go. And it doesn't quite work like that. So those are just a couple of thoughts I wanted to share with the group today.
Yeah. Thanks, Brendan. And we're going to have a question here coming up shortly about what worked well with this remote working environment. But on the budget question or budget topic for Dave and Rick, what area of the budget is getting most of the allocation for projects? So, Rick, we'll start with you on the real estate at Wedgwood. What area is it? Operations? Is it the front end acquisition side? Where are you seeing the majority of the projects get the budget?
Well, we have three different lines of business that we're currently, these are our lines of business that we're applying technology in. And that's the acquire, renovate, and sell part of our business. That's our Wedgwood Homes business. Our loan assets are NPL division as well. And then our commercial assets, which currently we're focused on multifamily, own, improve, and operate. And so across all three of those different areas, we're looking to really, it's another back to data, right? use this data management to better understand and engage with our market. We're finding a lot of insights just in looking at our own data and identifying patterns and opportunities in that. And we want to do a lot more of that across all three lines of business. We're going to continue to automate business process, as we've talked about before. There's some areas that we're still using spreadsheets or right in the middle of a macro process, and we need to basically replace that with automation to link up the two systems that sit on each side. And then lastly, it's a big one, and it is to streamline and automate our relationships with our partners, our external partners. So very often businesses think within their own four walls of their company, but we're looking to push out our business processes beyond all those walls and to begin to provide automation to the partners that we have. So one simple example of that is with Wedgwood Homes, where we partner with wholesalers, and realtors and other people in the real estate ecosystem. The more that we can automate or expand the process and automate the expansion, the benefit will accrue to all participants in that ecosystem for us. So that's a very interesting opportunity that we want to do a lot more with. We have other partners in other lines of business, and we'll seek to do the same with them.
Thanks, Rick. Dave?
Yeah, so like Rick, we have a number of different business units, and I'll jump back to that in a second. So, because we're part of the ComputerShare global family of companies or divisions, there's a continual investment in security and infrastructure. We'll continue to do that. I think, like everyone else, maybe 12 months after work at home, how do we improve security and reliability around connection? And, are we using the right tools? Are there new tools? Brendan mentioned sort of the change management approach to teams. Yeah, that was an interesting transition, for sure. But so there's always that, security infrastructure investment at our firm. And then inside the business units, servicing is kind of the mothership, so to speak, for our U.S. mortgage business. So there's a continual investment there. But for this year, in fulfillment, we're replacing our core technology. So we sit on top of a homegrown legacy tech that's been really there for about 20 years, Matt. And there's been some advancements around that technology, but it's a legacy platform. So we made the decision, instead of building a new platform, we bought one. So we're in the process of, bringing that in and going through all the configurations necessary to make sure we have the right borrower experience, right? Sure, we've made all the right hooks with our clients and customers. And then ultimately, why we're spending that money is, number one, decrease our IT spend, but, more importantly, improve the process, at least in fulfillment, for how our consumer experiences, the origination cycle, how our employees experience dealing with setting up loans, processing loans, underwriting loans, and closing loans. So that's going to be the big spend area for us in 2021.
Thanks, Dave. So we're going to change this just a little bit with 18 minutes left in our topic this afternoon. The next slide, remote work, and we had this come up a little bit earlier. We have a question that, Rick, you're going to start first, but let's do this from a time perspective, because I want to make sure that we have time to get to our call to action for the webinar attendees. So, Rick, you're going to start. Think of the one surprise about remote work over this last year, and if you're going to do anything different, the one thing that stands out. So for the rest of our panelists panel, you guys will do it too. So, Rick, we'll start with you.
Okay, I think level of productivity delivered by 100% workforce was the most surprising piece, and the speed at which they adapted to these new technologies. Those two things, I think, were a bit shocking, right? We always think about, when we think about rolling out these things, we think longer term, it's slower, etc., and more controlled. But we were able to roll it out rather quickly and get immediate benefits. So we were seeing an organization. Now, this is clearly motivated by people that were afraid generally, and they could be preoccupied by working, so they were doing long hours and things. But really, an awful lot of benefit. And I think the question to me is going to be, you had these people isolated at home, and they became very mature on this communication and collaboration platform. And what is the workplace going to be like when they bring those skills back that they honed in the last 12 months into a work office environment that has other dynamics and synergies associated with it? I think this is, I think it was Dave mentioned earlier, this is going to springboard productivity because of these new tools, right? We're going to now combine those where we have physical presence and you have these new communication and collaboration tools to use in that physical presence. It's going to really impact productivity, I think, significantly for our industry and our country.
Yeah, I would say as a sales professional, I would agree with you on that, Rick, because I've become more of a techie than I thought I ever would be. So videos and Zooms. So I would agree with that. So it's good to see. Dave, why don't you go next? What stands out? What was the surprise for you?
Well, I mean, I just echo what Rick said. I think the productivity is amazing. I think the way the IT team supported our employees has been great. The operators tell me that the engagement with supervisor to associate staff level folks has actually increased. That it's created, instead of walking around the office or maybe not walking around the office when you should, it's created some structures around, coaching and feedback that's actually gotten better, which is interesting. And then, we've got this whole work from home thing. I've heard it's now live at work versus work from home. And it feels like people are more available. I don't know if that's a great thing, but, for most of us, and Matt, I've known you for a long time, we all work hard, just what we do. But for a lot of people, work has expanded and productivity's been fantastic.
Thanks, Dave. Brendan?
Yeah, good question. Matt, I don't know if you want to maybe go to the next slide, because I think there's a little thought, right, that we're going to kind of speak to. But just like we said, right, this kind of interesting slide here, right, where you see that, we talked about this a little bit a minute ago, but remote workers, there tends to be a little bit more teaming, right, taking place. And I'm not sure we really realized that it would be this impactful. I think what surprised me about that was just the amount of demand, right? A lot of our customers really were looking for help to support them as they look to leverage things like the Office 365 stack, right? And because that's a SaaS-based product, you've got that monthly reminder, right? It's X number of users times Y dollars, and that's a monthly reminder, right, that you're paying for these tools. And so what we noticed is a lot of our customers are going, gosh, are we really getting the most out of this that we can, and helping this issue right here, right? Which is, we talked about a collaboration, but it's this teaming, right? This idea of teaming, how do they work together more efficiently, securely? So again, those are just a couple of things too that I noticed. It surprised me a little bit. There's so much more focus around this than we expected.
Thanks. Anybody want to volunteer? I'm kind of curious. I've seen some studies on this. Employee churn. Was there a notable change where maybe you lost 25 or 30% natural attrition, and then over this last year you saw that decrease? Maybe you can just answer it that way. Did you see a decrease, I guess, in your employee voluntary attrition, or did it stay kind of static?
Well, we're in the mortgage business, so attrition was high. in the fulfillment space with with the demand for underwriters, what people were paying and sign-on bonuses and the craziness, it was. Yeah. But the interesting part was not this question, but then you're hiring all these people remotely, which is a new skill set. So we hired lots, hundreds of people last year, just remotely, not necessarily ever meeting them face to face, all using the tools digitally, and we did a great job doing that. But because of the mortgage business last year, I think, Matt, most people that are operators like us probably experienced pretty high churn.
Yeah. Let's get to our last question for the panel. And Rick, we'll start with you on this. We talked about big data. We talked about the technologies. We talked about the teams and collaboration. What's the key call to action that you would like the webinar attendees to leave with today?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity now that we've had this disruption in our business to take a look at our businesses, and from a technology perspective, ensure that you have technology in the right place. That wholly manual activities can't be replaced with technology, and get those people to be doing higher level tasks and thinking. So review those processes and address any inefficiencies, and position yourselves well for coming out of this. I also think that you should plan big and execute small. I know this is a very generic term, but it's really helped us in the pandemic, and it's helping us come out of the pandemic. Always have that plan set and be able to execute in small pieces of it, and understand what you want where you want technology to take you, and start working that direction. So even if you don't own or run the company you work for today, you can still be a vocal proponent of what you've learned today, or some of the ideas that we've had today. So you can always take those back, and even as not a provider of technology in your organization, you can be a good customer and begin to ask internal in your organization for additional automation that'll help the overall business operate better, and perhaps you to do your job better and be more successful.
Thanks, Rick. Dave, let's move to you next, sir.
First of all, I'm wondering why my head's so big on this screen, but thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. No, I'd say, first of all, if you need marketing and sales help, M. Allen is a great firm. You do great work, even though my head's really huge on this screen, Matt. So yeah, I mean, in terms of revenue growth and marketing, people should talk to you. I'd also say that, sort of around what Rick said, I'd say invest now and get ready. In the mortgage business, we're definitely, things are going to change, and it's going to be a really dynamic year between what the GSEs have done and de minimis rules, and what's going to happen to consumers as they spin out, and with CFPB in terms of what they're focused on, what they're saying what they're proposing and what they're saying in the press releases. So obviously we've been in sort of this space where we've been focused on growing our businesses. We're going to have to get back to focusing more on compliance, investing, making sure defect rates are low, making sure all those things that are important to the regulators and the CFPB are taken care of.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that one. Thanks, Dave. Brendan.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And since we're debating the headshots that you put into this screen, Matt, mine could be less grainy, although I think that's not your fault. I think that might be my fault, so I can't beat you up too much on that front. But no, listen, what I would say, guys, is this. As one of our founders, the great Mo Khan, was quoted as saying about a year ago, he said, don't let a crisis go to waste, right? And I think there's so much opportunity to kind of leapfrog some of your competition. We have one customer actually that was building an IoT solution that we're helping them with, and they made a bad choice about 3-4 years ago about the chipset that they're using in their IoT device. They picked a very power hungry solution. Their competition went a different direction, and they made a mistake. And they've actually used this pandemic as an opportunity to fix it, right? To re-engineer that and get back in the game. So listen, I know, it's easier said than done. That takes time, energy, and resources. But, like I said, I think there's probably 2 or 3 key things that, from a call to action, beyond just don't let a crisis go to waste, what I'd recommend, and that is, and I think the guys touched on this, is really, take a look at your customer experience, right? Because that's where we're seeing most companies invest their dollars, right? Is really trying to redefine that customer experience, right? And that means, of course, looking at mobile first, but building a strategy for that personalization, right? To make that and retain customers, attract new customers. And that's where a company like Spiridian can help you, which is really selecting the right technology platform to make sure it aligns with some of those goals and objectives. So like I said, I think that's where I would highly recommend. It's all about customer experience, and that's where your investments will pay the most dollars the fastest.
Yeah, and I think the CX for Dave and I especially, and even Rick on the real estate, I think the customer experience, taking an outward in, people that deal in the sales pipeline meetings and so forth, we're always kind of talking about what's that outward in perspective about how we're positioning the solution. It's so key. My last, since I'll bring up the last commentary here on call to action, I think it was Rick that said something about think big. I would just then turn that and say divide and conquer. You only have so many resources. If you put them, and you do this 80-20 rule that a lot of us tend to do, where you put 80% towards the one priority. I think what this pandemic has shown us is if you're able to put say 10 to 15% of your total budget dollars towards R&D and think about 5+ years, or think about another worst case scenario that could happen, you're going to be able to leapfrog your competition and the marketplace. And so I would just say divide and conquer if you're able to put some resources. And then I think a subset of that is leverage the partners. Rick said this as well, and Speridian is doing this with Wedgwood. Leverage partners. You don't have to do this all internally. In fact, it's probably with the newer technologies, it's probably better to really use the experts and then start to develop that key knowledge that you need internally with some a few subject matter experts that manage the supplier. So I think from that perspective, we're a couple minutes ahead. I don't think David chimed in here. I don't think we had any questions from the attendees.
We do not at this time, so if anybody wants to get some in, now's the time. But yeah, we don't have at this moment.
All right, well, let's do this. I think everybody likes ending on time and getting some time back. So David Vita and Rick and Brendan, thank you all for joining me this afternoon. We hope you guys found this informative. Please ping us, let us know, give us feedback. And again, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy it, guys.
Thanks, Matt.